Alright, we're finally here to talk about the JEDI Juice Brew Day and show you the footage and stuff. Excuse the noise, I've been waiting for cars to go and planes to go over and the girls are inside making noise. Anyway, I originally started a brew for the JEDI Juice on the Wednesday and I skimped out. I was using very old Pilsner malt I had here and very old wheat malt. Now, the mash didn't go very well. I also noticed when I was milling the Pilsner malt, there was a couple of little grain weevils in it. I didn't think too much. I thought they might have just been hanging out on the mill. And then when I had issues, I went and looked later at the grain and went, ooh. And I ended up having to add some light dry malt and a bit of brew enhancer I had hanging around just to get the numbers up. But I went along with it. That's this one. I only kegged it today. I rushed it a little bit. So anyway, I ordered some new malt 4:30 that afternoon and got it express posted, and it was here the next morning. I didn't expect it. So I brewed it again. This time I adjusted my recipe, which I'll show you what I did, and everything went a lot smoother and to plan and to numbers and everything. Now, I didn't throw away that first batch. As you can see, I rushed it along. I did things a little bit different. I only used a single dry hop. It wasn't in a ferment fridge, but it still turned out pretty good. Look at that. It was only kegged this morning. And I kind of did everything you shouldn't do for an NEIPA, as in I rock and rolled the carb. I rushed it. My other one, second one, is in the fridge there, and it gets cold crashed tomorrow. So it'll be in a few days and I'll do a tasting video. So what I might do, someone asked me to start a Patreon account and I kind of need to. That's another long story. But I did start one, I just haven't told anyone about it. So I think some of my videos like that one that usually wouldn't get uploaded, I might stick in the Patreon account. And things like that, more random videos, and I keep doing my usual thing on my YouTube channel. So let's go and have a look how the brew day went using the proper malts. G'day, brew day is coming up, and so I'm just going to adjust this recipe that I made in the other video to suit my system a little bit better and to what I'd expect to get. Now, there's something I did forget about specifically for my system. Other people don't seem to have as much problems as me sometimes, but whenever I use a lot of wheat, I always get lower efficiency. Alright, I know that my efficiency, and I'm just going to guess, and I'm going to go down to about 70, which is still good efficiency. Don't be ashamed of ever getting 70% all up. But this just seems to work for me when I use a lot of wheat. So I can see now that I have to adjust the grain, raise the grain up a bit from the original recipe I came up with, because we want to go up to about 1060. I do, to get my 6% version. And you can see there that the grain's gone up to 3.44 kilo and 2.5 kilo wheat malt, and just over 300 grams of oats. Now, when you do this, it often, well, it does, it adjusts your hops too during the boil. Now, I don't want those adjusted. In fact, I'm turning mine down because I know what I've got left in 2 packets of Citra and Mosaic is 46 grams. And funnily enough, I've got 46 grams each, and that would be because I always brew Citra and Mosaic beers, and that's just what's left. I've got left from other brews. I'll buy some more for the dry hop when that comes about. I'm also going to do the hot whirlpool, so I'm going to drop this back, the original back, to about 5 grams of halitoe, and my halitoe is actually about 4.5%. And that's where I want to get for my 60, about 2.5 IBUs from my 60. And I can see here that I'm not getting any IBUs from the whirlpool. I must have dropped that to 80. I'm going to put that back up to 98 or whatever they have it as, 98 or 99. 98 will do. That gives me my hot whirlpool. And there we go, we're much closer to where I want to be, around that 50 IBUs. So I'm happy there with those grain amounts. I think that I'll get much closer to my numbers in my system. Your system might be different and you might not have any problems with wheat, but I always seem to. There was a good 6 months there when I was brewing wheat beers and I was trying to nut it out. But anyway, I found I just had to lower efficiency for it. The other thing to look at, especially with NIPAs, or any beer, but especially NIPAs, is your water profile. I'm going to briefly go over this. I do mine a little bit different than others do. Okay, we've jumped over to Easy Water. It's the water calculator I've used for many years. Beersmith 2 was pretty useless with water, or it was very hard to get your head around. I started using this. Other people use Brew water. I don't use Brew water because they asked for a donation, and I gave them a donation, and they said it wasn't enough. So I told them to stick it. So I still use Easy Water, and it works for me. Now I've got my water profile in there. I've got my 20 litres of mash water and 15 litres of sparge water. This isn't a how to use Easy Water, but it's just explaining how I got to my salt additions for me. It will be different for you, for your different water. Okay, I've put in 3.44 kilo of my Pilsner malt, 2.5 kilo of wheat, and oats. I don't think Brew Water had oats either. They don't have oats, so I just put in 300 grams of base malt. It doesn't really make much difference. You can see the estimated mash pH is quite high. You want it around this area here, and it's quite high. I know from my usual beers, I usually add a little bit of gypsum, maybe 3 grams, and calcium chloride and Epsom salts. And it gets me around the right area. It's usually about 5 to 6 grams of calcium chloride. It's usually about 4 or 5 grams to 6 grams of Epsom salts. It just depends on the beer. I'm going to go with 5 there. And because we're doing an NIPA, I probably don't need gypsum. I usually would. It'd usually be something like that. We're still way out here, and that is because of the wheat and Pilsner malt. It changes things compared to my usual ale malt. If you look down the bottom here, we're mostly in the green. But for an NIPA, we're at the wrong end of the chloride and sulfite ratio. We want to be at the other end. We want nearly double the chloride to sulfate. We're on the opposite end. It says bitterness. We want this to say maltiness down here. So to start with, I'm just going to take away that gypsum. That already gets us to more chloride than sulfate. I want to push that a little bit further. Actually, we're looking at the mash one for now. I want to push that a little bit further. Some people have 1 to 2 ratio. I'm going to go sort of in between. I'll try 6.5 grams. All right, that's probably going to do me. I'm not going to go double, but 166 to 98 gives us a fair ratio there. 1.7 ratio. And it'll enhance maltiness, which is what we want with an NIPA. You might find that a little bit weird because most IPAs you'd probably want it in the bitterness end, but for NIPAs you want it in the malty end. It just gives a good mouthfeel, and it's not so bitter. You get all that hop flavour without the bitterness. My mash pH is still out. I'll add some, I've got some acidulated malt, but I will use lactic acid. I know I've got that in the garage and I don't have to mill it. So we'll try like 3 mil, 5.6. All right, we'll try 4 mil. There we go, 5.53. That is close enough for me for a mash pH. It's just about smack in the middle. So that's the pH sorted.
that's the mash profile sorted of how we want it at the end. But you can see, because I haven't treated my sparge water, it's still not where it's different, you know, to what the mash water profile is. So we can adjust the sparge water to make it the same numbers up that are for the mash, if that makes sense. This would probably be okay still. We're still in the green everywhere down the bottom. I suppose we're a little bit low on calcium. We're a little bit low on sulfate there too. We're sort of right at the bottom end. But it's simpler to fix. If you're going to adjust sparge water, you just sort of got to go, yes, I will, and yes, I will, and it automatically works it out for you. So if we look down the bottom again, all the numbers are in green and they match our mash profile, which we set up originally. I won't be adding them to sparge water because of the way I sparge. I'll be adding them to the boil. So we'll just try and remember those numbers. We'll take a note and we'll go and whack them in Beersmith and see what Beersmith says. We're back in Beersmith. I'm going to add my water. West. I've put that profile in myself. I'm going to use 35 litres. We'll go over to the water tab. Makes it a little bit easier to see what we're doing. I'm going to add, I don't use this match target profile. I know my friends do, but I do it all manually. Add salts. I want my calcium chloride. I want my 6.5 grams in the mash. And I want my Epsom salts. Epsom salts, 5 grams in the mash. And I want my calcium chloride for the boil, which was 4.9 grams. And I want my Epsom salts for the boil, which was 3.9 grams. I'm going to go back to the design and have a look. Okay, and we're going to add our lactic acid just so we remember. And we wanted 4 ml, I think it was. So there's our complete recipe. We'll go over and have a look at the session tab and see what Beersmith reckons. Beersmith reckons 5.4 mash pH. That's perfect. It's a little bit different from the easy water, but then again, this has got oats in it and the easy water didn't. That could be a little bit of a difference, and they're always a little bit different. There's a few, a couple of points out. So there, that is the recipe I'm going to go with on a brew day.
This one's the Gladfield wheat. She looks a bit more uniform and a bit bigger. And this one's the Gladfield Lager Light. Looks a bit bigger too. That milled much easier. Wasn't all crunchy and hard. Have a look. Whoops, that's well and truly crushed. Maybe too fine. Nah, they crushed a lot better than the wheat I tried yesterday. We might have some flow issues today. I've got 20 litres in here again, all pre-warmed or heated, with my salts in there, my lactic acid. It's at about 72. It's a bit thicker than yesterday. Let the grain bed settle and soak. Get nice and wet. I'll give it a stir, then we'll get the pump on. Well, that's been in there for 5 minutes. It's much wetter. That makes sense. Easier to move, looser. And get the pump on just slowly. I'm right at the bottom of this rubber. I'm expecting that it'll probably go just above that rubber before it starts to drain. I'm set at 68 today. It's kind of typical, isn't it? One day you have it going. On the first day when I wasn't happy with the grain, it didn't really back up much. It really hasn't backed up much. Hasn't been much to worry about. We're just over halfway through now. But I'll just loosen it up a bit. Make sure we're stirred again. Not right down to the bottom, as I always say. Because I think by the time we get to sparge, it could be quite gummy. We are at the end of the mash time. But we have clogged right up, which is what I expected to happen yesterday. But it didn't happen yesterday. I kept the flow. Today, with this different malt, it's a different story. You never quite know. That's where some rice hulls may have come in handy. But I suspect that it was that wheat seemed to mulch up into finer pieces, much more than the wheat I used yesterday. And that's gummed everything up. Now, it is a NEIPA, so we're not too worried about clarity. The wort has been okay. There's not many lumps or anything in it. But I just want to try and get a little bit of flow before I start the sparge. It doesn't, oh yeah, it's starting to go through. I think it's going to be a slow sparge. But that's all right. Oh, gee, it is. It's like cement, some of the parts down there. So thick. Now, if I do happen to stir up too much, you can always recirc for a little while longer. But I think we'll be fine today. It's just all that wheat. Like porridge. I can't see any bits coming through or anything. They haven't stirred it up that much. I think I might just run with this. And it's going to be a slow sparge. I'll just check that's still draining before I commit to the sparge just yet. Very slow. It is draining though. I think we're going to get a fair bit of compaction during the sparge. Must have found the blockage then. So we've got some flow again. Much better. The wort's cloudy, but as you'd expect, but there's no lumps. Nothing to worry about. I reckon I'm going to run with that and turn this off, and I'm going to sparge. I'm going to pump straight from my HLT. I'm using the Brew 65 as a HLT, and I'll just sparge with 15 litres again. We've actually got quite good drainage, more than I expected. It's going alright. I've just turned it down a bit now because I'm talking, but you can see I'm sparging with quite a flow and we're not building up over that rubber thing. So I think I was a little bit worried more than I should be, but it's better to be safe than sorry, I guess. We're starting to back up a bit now. I'll just back off this sparge a bit. I can't do it while I'm holding the camera. It's slowed up a bit, but we've still got flow. We'll come back if there's any more problems. It's slowing up a bit, but don't be afraid to give it a stir. Don't go right down to the bottom. I wouldn't advise that. But you can break it up. Got about 5 litres to go. But even if you have to go down to the bottom, don't stress too much. Just go gently. Try not to like scrape the plate. Alright, it's just 2 litres to go. There's 15 litres. That should be just about enough. I have a feeling this grain bed's going to hold a lot of water. So if you have to run an extra litre or something to come up to your 29 litres, it's quite fine to do so. As you're waiting for it to drain like this, the ones that take a long time, you can turn up your elements down the bottom a bit, get your water closer to boiling so you don't have to wait so long for the ramp. It doesn't look like we're anywhere near my volume yet, but as you can see there's a lot of water still in here. I'm just going to let this drain for a while. Well, we're at 100, we're just about to come to the boil. Oh, we have come to the boil. Let me take that out of there. Turn the pump off. But we actually didn't catch much stuff. With all that stirring, there's really didn't get much out of it. I have got firm cap in there, so I don't have to worry about it boiling over. But I'll take a reading now, and I'll just weigh the hops quickly and we'll get them in. It's just my 5 grams of halito. I'll take a reading first, hang on. Trying to keep it out of the steam. I'll just take a reading first, sample for a reading. I'll put that in to chill down, and there's my 5 grams of halito. It's a very different colour wort from yesterday. So we're looking for about 552, 1052. Oh, you're kidding. And today, we're about 53. Cool. We're on target today. Oh, I don't have to touch this for another hour. Then it's flame out hops. We're just about at the end of the boil. I've got my 46 grams of Citra and my 46 grams of Mosaic. And that was by accident. That was what I had left in each packet. Now I put that into Beersmith and it turned out perfect. So there you go. Doesn't matter if you use a little bit more or a little bit less for this flavour addition. I'm doing a 15-minute hot steep. And I'll put them in straight at flame out. Turn the elements off. Put them in like that. I'm just going to give it a good stir just to make sure they all get broken up. Pea soup. That'll do me. I'll put the lid on, let this sit for 15 minutes. And once the time for my steep is up, I'm just going to recirc through my chiller, back into the Robo Brew, or Brewzilla, whatever you're using, Grainfather, it doesn't matter, until I drop the temp down in here, and then I'll transfer to the Firmzilla I don't have to get it down to pitching temp. I just want to knock off that temp of that wort fairly quickly so we're not getting any more bitterness out of those hops. It might be hard to tell, but I'm chilling. Got it running. It should only take a couple of minutes, 5 minutes or something. So we're down to 89 already. I started at 257. It's now 258. So it's, you know, probably hasn't even been a minute, and we've knocked off 12 degrees. It's good if you take your insulation off and things. I'm not going to today, but you know, all that sort of helps. We just hit under 80 for people that sort of like that temp, and it's been 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes or something like that. It's saying at the bottom of the Robo Brew that we're down to 70 now, so I'm just going to turn it off here. This is the chilled wort going back into the Brewzilla, Robo Brew. I'm going to move that over into my Brewzilla, all these different names. And I'm not going to turn it on full, but we're at 70 now with a second pass through here. We must be getting pretty cool now. I could do it in one pass in winter like this. It's just I wanted to knock the heat off the wort. It's a bit like pea soup. Creamed pea soup or something. You can usually tell if you're going in too hot. It's going, that's fine. Probably going to be too cold if I'm not careful. That's a better angle with the light behind me instead of in front of me. If you do want to get a little bit more out, you can tip it up. You tip it up towards this end, of course, where your pipe is. Just tip it up gently. I'm at about 21 litres. Might be a bit hard for you to see. 22 litres. I know I'm going to start probably sucking air soon, so I might just tip it up a little. Put my toe under it. I'll just get a little bit more out. Don't go too silly because you'll end up sucking all of the junk through. But I'm just about at the 23. There you go. You can hear it starting to suck air. That'll do. I've got my 23. I'll turn the pump off. That is a murky, soupy looking thing. And I just use this for a guesstimate to see where we are. Oh, look at that. Perfect for pitching the yeast. So it's a bit warmer up the top. I went a bit faster. So, with no messing around, the sticker on the side saying 20.6 or something, that's perfect to kick off the yeast with. I'll get the yeast in and stick it straight in the ferment fridge. No mucking around, eh? You're supposed to spread that out a bit better than that, but it'll work. I'll try and swing the ball out of it. Doesn't really matter. There we go. Done. I'm going to ferment that about 19 degrees. Now I forgot to take a reading. I filled this up first while I was chilling. I knew there'd be a bit of junk in there, so I filled up half a glass as well, so I can pour off what's the top of here and get a good hydro reading. But I've got my refrac here, we'll have a look. We're aiming for about 1060. I wouldn't care for a little bit under, but we're at 52, so we should be close. Oh my goodness, we are spot on. Spot on. So, there you go. I'll have that recipe up. It'll be slightly different, as I said, from the ones that are originally up. Adjusted to my system, lowered the efficiency a little to deal with the wheat. And she's in there balancing just. So it's Saturday night. So it's been 2 days since I pitched yeast and brewed it. I'm going to put the first dry hop in now. It's Nottingham yeast, so it'll finish off pretty quick at 19. So I nearly thought about doing it yesterday on day 1. I didn't get round to it, and I thought day 2 was going to be fine anyway. Most of the recipes I've seen say day 3, but Nottingham is pretty fast yeast, and I just want to get the first ones in. 100 grams worth of hops for the first dry hop. I couldn't decide whether just to go with the Citra Nelson or go with like the older recipe where there's a heap of mosaic. So I went a third of each. There's 33 grams of mosaic and Citra and Nelson Sav. Do it however you want. You could add just mosaic for the first dry hop and just use Nelson for the second, or Citra, or experiment. If you want to stick to the recipe, the newer recipe I got, use Citra and Nelson, or read through the recipes again and decide what you want to do. I'm just going to dry hop through the lid tonight. I'm not going to bother with the bottle. Now it's in full ferment mode. There's heaps of CO2 coming out. There's nothing really to worry about at this stage. They can be tricky to undo. It gets a lot easier if you let the pressure out. You'll probably see the krausen come up. I don't know if you can pick it up on the camera. Pop. Don't let it scare the hell out of you. You can see now with the pressure out, the krausen's come right up like krausen, like it's supposed to be. That's about all you can see in this beer at the moment. Here we go again. I got the same amount of hops for dry hop 2. It's about 30 grams, 33 grams of mosaic, Citra and Nelson. So I brewed it on the Thursday and pitched the yeast. Then it was Friday, Saturday on the second day. 2 days of fermentation. I did the first dry hop, and then now it's Wednesday. This is the second dry hop, and that'll be it. I'll put this in and I'll turn it up to about 20 odd degrees to help it finish off, and in about 3 days time I'll just double check things, that I'll cold crash it if everything's looking fine, and then we'll be drinking it. So this is probably the last vid until the tasting vid. This is what we're looking like before I put this second dry hop in. Still very cloudy, but it's supposed to be, isn't it? There's not much room here, but we'll try and get these in. Much easier to get the lid off if you let the pressure out. Again. Smells like noddy yeast. Got no room here today. Probably couldn't see that, but anyway, trust me, I put them in. We're foaming up. Get this lid back on. I might just whack a little bit of a purge just in case. I don't think it's really needed. The good thing was, though, with that foam up, we capped on foam, didn't we? So that will reduce any oxygen in there. Plus, it's still fermenting. Any little bit that might have got in the top there will get pushed out. I'll bump this up to 20, and we'll see you on tasting day. Cheers. So anyway, that's it. The tasting video will be up shortly. I've tried a few interesting things with this. How I've rushed it. I bottled 2 bottles out of the fermenter. One I shook and one I didn't. One I squeezed the air out of. So it'll be interesting just to see the differences and how these end up. I'm not going to rock and roll carb the good one. I'm going to, I'll force carb it, but I'm not going to rock and roll it. And we'll just see what differences happen in the next month or so as they age, if they last that long. Cheers.